One. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me is the Curly Man.
Paul, hey everybody, how's it going?
It's pretty good, Paul. Can't wait to record to get this done so we can go back to streaming because we've gone back to that finally.
Yeah, anybody who's listening in, we finally decided to play the coveted and cursed Stranger of Paradise on Alejandro's Twitch.
Twitch, yeah.
And that has been an experience, which besides not getting the full picture here and there of like one of us getting locked out of cutscenes here and there, it's been a meme-tastic experience.
Yes. Yeah, especially getting to hear you, like, it's like the Rosencrest and Guildenstern, it feels like, of me hearing you react to the things while I'm just there, because I joined on your party. So, yeah. But, other than that, how's, like, the bachelor life treating you right now for this week?
It's been nice just to control my schedule and be as loud as I want because my wife is in North Carolina right now visiting some friends. And
wait, where did the hurricane hit? Was it south?
It was technically up through Florida, and it's already gone through North Carolina and all that stuff, but now it's like, I think it was a tropical storm by the time it hit North Carolina, and they're like on the western side of it. So they were like far enough away that it wasn't really a concern for them.
And I assume she went after everything got hit,
she went up like a couple days after it would have passed.
Makes sense, yeah.
So that was like taken care of, went up to New York and into Canada and all that, and just she's enjoying the time of her life because there's actual fall going on up there. There's red leaves, it's chill. It's like 40 degrees, and she just keeps bragging about it. She sent me a picture where she was eating a burger by a coffee shop that had really nice fall leaves in the background, and it had 9 slices of bacon in it. And I was like, you son of a gun, you better bring one of those back for me. So I was
even though she does, it'll be funny because it's like it wouldn't taste the same. I remember one time I had a friend bring me, because I had never tried In-N-Out burger, and I had a friend that he drove to Dallas when I was in Tulsa, and he was like, I'll bring you some In-N-Out.
Oh no.
I was like, are you sure? It's a 4-hour drive. Yeah, I'll bring you. I was like, okay. And he brought it, and I had to reheat it, and then I ate it. I was like, I'll reserve judgment because obviously In-N-Out is such a hyped up burger chain.
We don't even have it out here, so I have no horse in that race.
I know, because it's just only in Dallas and in California. So it was like, yeah, I'll reserve judgment. And then I finally ate In-N-Out a year later. Well, 2 years later when I visited LA, and even then I was like, yeah, this is good, but it's like everyone has hyped up this burger like it's the second coming of Christ, and I don't see it. I'd rather eat Five Guys or Red Robin even.
Find yourself at one of these Popeyes locations out here and get yourself the chicken sandwich.
I've tried this chicken sandwich.
Oh, you have? That's right. Okay,
yes,
good.
I tried it when I was in Florida when I went to get my vaccine last year.
That's right.
I was like, I'm definitely going to try it because I want to see which one's better, the Chick-fil-A sandwich and the Popeye sandwich, and I tell you, I can't decide. I like both.
They're both have
really good. Yeah.
It's neither are good for you, I'll tell you that. Man, but what are we here for, Alejandro?
Yeah, we're here for the X Bottom Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Thursday from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing, available in the YouTube channel rebranded Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find the links in the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-gaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. Just to address that real quick, calling ourselves Escape Media when all we did was playing games, like just talk about games, was a very disingenuous about what
it was a nice branding choice, so we could branch out if we ever wanted to.
And the thing is, it never happens. So I was like, I don't think we will, based on the bandwidth and our real interests. So I was like,
that kind of capability to
and then me realizing there existed like an Escape Media LSC or something like that, so I was like, so I was like, I might as well just change it to Escape Gaming. The good thing is that rebranding it was really quick, so we still haven't trademarked it. I'm
impressed about, and I'm pretty glad for that, that's for sure.
Yeah, everything has been rebranded now, so like if you go to the podcast where it says Escape Gaming presents the Xbox on an audio services, is already changed.
Yeah, so if you search it, look up, I mean, if you spell escape right, it should show up anyway, but now you make it easier for you. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, at least it helps us, like, at least laser focus a little bit more. And we just also recently passed International Podcast Day, remember, like that last Friday.
Yeah.
Remember? I was like, yeah, it's I didn't know there was an International Podcast Day celebration, but I just plugged it in there on Twitter. That's when I rebranded. So enough preamble, Paul. So give me your extended thoughts of how much you've enjoyed Stranger of Paradise.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and eat a little bit of crow because I will say that I have been enjoying myself. And it's okay, so it's going to kind of tie into our thoughts on Valkyrie Elysium because kind of a similar game. And we're playing them very similar at times, so I might kind of blend that a bit. So first of all, I gotta say that even though everybody's been clowning on the characters, I will say they have the edge on anybody from Valkyrie Elysium.
Oh yeah, they have a personality, even if it's a stupid personality.
It might be dumb, but it is one. And the fact that I think Jack is really the only one that really takes himself that seriously, and everyone else is
just kind of they're just like normal people, they just reacting like normally.
Buddies playing a shooter game after a long day at the big job in the city, and they're like, "Hey man, how's it going? Don't you love hanging out like this? It's great." And then Jack is the only one like role playing the hell out of his character, like, "Oh, shut up, man! I just gotta kill Chaos. We need to find the crystals."
Yeah, where are the crystals?
And like every time a character tries to walk up and say something to him, I was thinking it was just going to be those first few examples that we'd seen memed a million times. But even then, after that point, he continues to just cut people off when they try to exposit things. And he walked up in like this calm but firm manner one time, and he was just like, "Just please tell us where the crystals are."
Right.
And that made me lose it because it wasn't just over the top. It was just like, please, just stop. And I definitely appreciated that. As for the actual gameplay, lots of fun, plenty of different variety to find.
It's mindless in a good way how we're playing it.
On the right difficulty, because I still have to at least give that cautionary mention. Don't play this on action or the worst,
the harder
difficulty, unless you really want to strategize and plan out exactly how you want to play this and min-max every character's outfits, weapons, role to play. It's just too much to deal with. And the best way to play that game by far is putting it on the story mode, putting like auto selecting the armor, and picking whatever weapon looks the coolest for you.
Yeah, that story mode feels like it's closest to what the vibe of this game is meant to be. Like an absolute meathead that's just gonna like crack skulls and just obliterate everything in its path. And it's so funny, like you've noticed like how different he does the finishers to everyone. I love the WWE slam he does to the worms. Or even the griffins.
It really reminds me, because I've been going into D&D a lot, and my DM has this great habit of saying whenever you are the one to kill an enemy, he actually says, "All right, how do you want to kill them? Like, what is your finishing move?" And so you get to have this little 5-second moment where you describe what you do to the enemy, and I imagine that's what's happening with Jack and these enemies. And he like gets him down, you hit circle to do the finisher, and just this disembodied voice is like, "All right, Jack, how do you want to kill them?" And he's like, "I want to flip him over my head and break his neck in the process and slam him on the ground." And then that's exactly what happens. And he just does such crazy nonsense. There's one where there's like a giant ogre, and he like arm bars him and flips him. And then he does like the freaking German suplex move on an enemy. It's so entertaining, and the fact that each one is very different keeps things interesting, at least. And so far, the enemies have changed from mission to mission. I don't know.
There's more variety than you give credit for. There's a few repeats, like the bombs, the thornberries, the cacti, the cacti.
Right, but then that's like Final Fantasy staples that you just kind of accept. But for the most part, like the standard enemies have been different every single time. Yeah, and that's more than I could say for most hack and slash games at all.
Yeah, and the cacti always cracks me up because he's just so out of place. It and the thornberry are so out of place in this game.
Oh yes.
Especially because the thornberry looks so cute, but he destroys you if you don't hit him first. And the cacti has the Looney Tunes running sound.
Yeah.
So,
For anybody who's not aware, those are two of the most famous Final Fantasy enemies, and for some reason they always show up in every single Final Fantasy game, and it's still just so funny. Honestly, I hope that we get some of those in Kingdom Hearts, the next one, because I've missed that, honestly.
yeah, they need more Final Fantasy stuff back in Kingdom Hearts, because they literally like put that way to the side with 3 and too much Disney crap.
Yeah,
So,
just I mean, make a Heartless that looks like a Tonberry. That's all I ask.
oh yeah.
But yeah, so I think that was really it for that side of it. I mean, I've talked about just about everything with Stranger in Paradise.
Same.
And then you compare that to the next segment that we had for Valkyrie Elysium.
So real quick with that, have you beaten Valkyrie Elysium, or which chapter are you on?
I haven't finished the story. I think I'm on 6.
Okay, you have 3 more chapters.
Yeah. So because the storylines start to take a while, and they are in a labyrinth of a city.
Yeah, I think are you in the chapter where you have to like find this plant that you have to absorb, and then the plant disappears some big tree branches that are blocking your path?
I don't think so. Or at least that might have been the next one that I haven't done.
Okay, so you probably ended chapter 5 into chapter 6.
Yeah.
Chapter 6, there's much tedium in chapter 6 and chapters 8 and 9. The tedium in that one, because you have to repeat over and over and over again finding that plant that you absorb with like the left trigger, and then the final 2 chapters is called like the Serpent's World, that is kind of like in reference to the world serpent from Norse myth. It's a very bland looking, like foggy place that you don't take 5 steps before you're surrounded by enemies. So unless you like really vibe with the combat, that it can get really tedious how often you have to fight in those final chapters. So just be aware of that. But how have you liked this game?
I think I liked it more at the start, and slowly it's turned more and more into the world that surrounds them. Boring, a little bit boring, at least. Just really featureless, kind of devoid of personality, bland. And I can only imagine if I had to spend full price for this, I probably would not be as chill with it as I am.
Yeah. And you muted yourself. You unplugged.
Wire got unplugged a little bit. Okay, so anyway.
So what do you? I didn't hear anything what you said. Like.
Oh shoot. So I think I was talking about the building into I don't even remember, but yeah, basically it felt like things kind of dropped off for me a little bit. I was saying how if I had to spend full price. Okay, yeah. And the fact that we have this system where we split the price makes it a lot better, because we're spending, I think it was that one
30. No, this was a 60 game, so we split it half for this.
So at least we didn't have to spend the extra $10 on that one, but it's at the same time, I can totally imagine if this was like your one purchase for the month or something, and then that was the whole game. Because at least for some games, like you have your Kena Bridge of Spirits, where it's like very clearly a smaller studio. There's not a lot of content, and most of it is like either little collectibles or.
And it was smaller priced. I think it was 30.
It was like 30 or 40 bucks or something.
It was 30. It was 30 when it launched.
Yeah, you have games like that where like 30, 40, 50s where you set your expectations for that when it's a $60 game and you get that level, because I would say that there's about the same level of content between Valkyrie Elysium and Kena Bridge of Spirits. Tell me if I'm wrong on that one.
Kena is shorter. Kena is way shorter.
It is shorter because of various reasons, but especially now with the new game plus and whatever, they've kind of added some things. But the real thing behind that is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like there's a whole lot to really hold you after a while. And it's like,
the thing is that like I beat this game. I did all the side quests, and when you combine all that, that's like 25 hours total. So like again, like I don't judge games on just length alone. That to me is like in fact, for this kind of game, that's perfect length. Because I remember Nier Automata, a game that I actually do like, but trying to do all those endings, because you need to do all those endings to really get the real meaning of that ending. That was like a 40-hour game, and the combat complexity of that game wasn't complex enough to withstand such a long game. Especially when the best parts about that game was the story with the amazing moments. And Valkyrie Elysium is as mid a game as you can possibly. If you want to talk about a game that's mid, this fits the bill. Like Graphics are totally mid. Story, there's barely any story.
Honestly,
there.
It's worse than mid. There is no story.
Yeah, but I feel it's a package that, depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for a DMC style combat game, the combat on this game is shockingly good. That just keeps getting better and better and better the more you upgrade it. And a lot of the hidden depth is also if you do the side quests, because the side quest gives you extra weapons, and the side quest gives you extra abilities.
Moves, yeah.
And the side quests also give you a little bit of background for your very bland cast of characters that, if you don't do that, it's like you had known nothing of them. You know nothing of like what makes them tick. And even then, because the game is like so cutscene light, like if the few cutscenes you get is when you find that other like cool looking Valkyrie Hildy, that you got to her first, and you're like, man, this design's really cool. I'll say that despite the visual blandness, I think there's some cool designs here and there. The thing is that the world itself it's so lifeless.
Yeah. Which
in a way fits the vibe of a world that has completely... It's basically on the eve of Ragnarok. That's basically the whole gist of it. Why all these places that you go are so empty is because everyone has died, basically. Just if there's a few towns that had like 1 or 2, 3 people still there, but everyone has just become souls. So
it makes sense in a way, but then it also... we've now seen places that do that plot line and keep things very interesting. I mean, you look at the ones that do it right, the ones that we talk about all the time, between your Last of Us, your Breath of the Wilds, and even Final Fantasy 13-3 Lightning Returns does this basically entire plot line almost 1-to-1. Which, did you play that one?
13-3? Yeah. I played the demo. I can play it on Xbox on Series S because it's on Game Pass.
The entire game plays exactly like this, and it's kind of funny the more I thought about it, because it literally is, you have a hub room, you get talked to by like a deity to do certain things, and then you get transported into the world, and there's a few NPCs, but most are souls that you have to do something for to bring them back.
Okay, yeah, that's literally this game.
It is beat for beat, and then you look at the outfits that Valkyrie and Lightning wear in that, and then you're like, there's a connection here. I feel that somebody lined up with. So it's just really funny how that happens, and because I know that I lost interest on Lightning Returns, I'm starting to like dive into that a little bit here. However, Valkyrie Elysium has better combat.
And that's the thing. This is one of those few mid games that I say, like, if you're about gameplay is king, the combat of this game more than holds up itself, like at the end of the bargain, even when everything else around it sucks. Enough for me to like I got to play this 3 straight days when it finally came out, and did everything that I was able to do with that, and I felt pretty relatively satisfied. Also, again, keeping the caveat, kind of like what we did with Saints Row, that we didn't pay personally the full price for it. So these are the 2 games these mid games, both Saints Row and Valkyrie, that I really enjoyed, but also in the context of the arrangement we have that allowed us to play it in a cheaper way. Both of these games.
Pick one, which would you say is better? I know they're very different.
Actually, Valkyrie.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, actually we'll pick Valkyrie because just for the simple fact that it didn't break on me. Saints Row broke a few times for me. It's like it was less polished, even though like I feel like Saints Row has more to do outside of just its main story.
Yeah.
But again, like you and I value differently in a way. So like I don't care for if a game gives me more time with it. I just care if a game, like the time that I spend with a game, is actually worth it for me. And I would say both of these games are wait for sale. That's definitely, like, for me, it's like if you can find them cheap, they are properly priced in their midness. They're totally enjoyable games. They have a 62 and 66 Metacritic. I feel that's exactly how they should be rated.
Yeah, that's, like, that's pretty close. Yeah.
Yes. And then I'm still playing Valhalla. I'm at 40 hours without having done any single main story still, because I'm still
Honestly, you're getting close to me. I checked just now and I'm at 63.
Yeah.
So you are very quickly catching up to my content level with Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah. And I did a stream called Testing Valhalla because I was testing the new. If you're on video right now, you probably noticed that I look a little sharper. I bought a new camera, the PlayStation camera. I bought it for like really cheap in one of these stores from here. they were selling it for 25 and this thing retails for 60. So they were just really wanted to get rid of this camera, and it was new.
And it looks great.
Yeah, like I like how it looks now in Zoom. I look sharper. It is actually look at 1080p. The other one was at 720p, and
oh shoot.
And I have less and if you notice, I have less things bleeding from my background, so it's working well. And if I adjust, it also moves. and I really love that about it. And it works seamlessly as a stream. That's why we stream Stranger of Paradise. I was like, I'm trying to. I had that Twitch just sitting there, and if I can just plug in, and I'm glad the PS5 and the Xbox also sort of do this. That they you just press a button to start streaming, and just go. The less friction I have of having to plug in my Elgato and having to find extra HDMIs, lower the resolution of my TV because my Elgato topped at 1080p and I have a 4K TV, and I don't want to remain playing at 1080p on a 4K TV, so of course I'm gonna switch back to 4K, but that means having to unplug the Elgato, replug the HDMIs, up the resolution. That's just too much hassle for me to want to keep just streaming. And this setup that I got now helps me now. Just it will always stream at 1080p, but I can always look at my TV at its best resolution, so it's the best of both worlds. And I want to stream more like that, and that's where I did Valhalla. You can see in that hour how I play that game. I'm very go everywhere, methodically check everything, try to do as much stealth as I can. Thankfully for me, the moments I do stealth don't break like yours do. You can go check at Dork of Art. He posted a video called Testing where her stealth out of nowhere with like no
warning whatsoever.
With no warning whatsoever, you're already in combat. So
one stealth kill and everyone goes, I found him, and then it just all hell breaks loose. Of course I stopped right before that because the point of it was to make sure I was validated in this moment. I don't know if I've ever said it on our recordings, but to find out that what I was seeing was real and that I wasn't just missing something was very nice to find.
I'm glad that I saw your settings, because I was like, okay, you have the settings exactly like I have them. Right. With one extra tweak that I turned off the instant assassinations to kind of do the minigame just to... It works. I like that minigame. So,
I think I didn't experience the minigame before I found that, so I just turned it off because I didn't know how quickly it goes through. Seeing how slow it is made me feel a little better about that. So I don't know, if I feel confident enough about it, I might change it, but as it is, I've just enjoyed the heck out of You serious right now, dude?
Is he chewing the thing?
he found his squeaky toy again. But yeah, just if I ever feel like I want to change things up, I might mess with that. But it's been really nice because at first I was able just to praise the accessibility options briefly on Valhalla, just how I used to be able to lower the enemy's health a little bit to just feel a little more confident, and then now that I have all of this great gear and stats and such, I can boost that back up and still feel like it's a fair fight now.
And the game doesn't penalize you for doing that.
It feels great because I think giving people that opportunity, you might have a few people that are like, oh, I'm going to make it the easiest as possible, but it's like most people are just going to make it fun for them and then leave it be. And I still once again disagree so heavily with that guy at XCOM that said, oh, if you give people the opportunity, they'll take the fun out of their own game. And I was like, you son of a bitch, if I find you. You ruined so many people's opinions on games. But anyway, so yeah, that's about it for me. And then did you want to talk a little more about Valhalla, or you want
nothing new to report, just that I'm still playing. I think Valhalla has become my new games as a service, quote unquote. Like right now, I'm so out of Destiny. I got everything I kind of want out of this season, and I don't want to keep playing anything of this loop. In fact, when we did the raid, was it 2 days ago? Yeah. That was basically me like being dragged, kicking and screaming without really doing it, because I just don't want to.
You did not want to be there the whole time.
And,
I was like, oh, I'm glad that he's here doing this with us.
I know, because that's the thing. I can still have fun, but I was also being a little bit of an asshat about it, like subtly, because I wanted to keep playing Valhalla, literally. So.
And you kept like, oh, it's nice that you have an opportunity to have this very exclusive weapon that I have already. And I was like, dude, you are being so rude right now.
Hey, after 31 Bolt of Glass runs to get my Vex, I deserve to have a big head about it. Especially against Spartan, our buddy from our clan. that he kept getting so many drops on him, and a few of us would like Man on a Mission or other clan buddy, he still doesn't have Vex.
Right.
He's at the same amount of runs I had, so
it's super true, and I feel like they do have to change some of those, especially like for something that's been out for so long. Like at least lower the raise the chances.
Chances, because it's just at a certain point I realized that having to play the game of chance like that is like sometimes it's disrespectful of your time, especially if you really want it. You have had the luck that sometimes you had the things drop with you, not expecting to get it, and it's very hard to get at that mindset with Destiny, because if you're not expecting to get it, why are you playing? So it's that weird psychology.
I think it's like at least for me personally, I had to keep my goal elsewhere. For right now, it's the red borders, which are less RNG and it's more.
By the way, screw this game, because remember when I told you I had already all the red borders for the cannon?
Yes.
I dismantled one and it didn't count, so I had to run the stupid raid again to get a fifth one.
Oh no!
So
I thought they had fixed that.
No, when that happened, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna craft this and start, and then it didn't happen. I was like, I fumed. But
that is so.
Yeah, I'm glad Assassin's Creed Valhalla is like my chill game that I can put. It's gonna be the game that I'm always gonna stop, because I know it's a monstrous game. I've sent the meme that the how long to beat has it at 56 hours if you just mainline, at 90 hours if you're a completionist. I'm like, I don't know how you could do this at 90 hours completion. There's some people are like, I'm at 200 hours.
They must have optimized something to get that number, because I feel like I didn't do a whole lot of side content. I kind of actively avoid it because the mysteries, which are the side content, are so vague that I have no idea what they want me to do half the time.
You have to pay attention. That's the problem. You have to pay attention of what they tell you.
If you don't say that, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense to me. And there was this dude where he was just like, yeah, you need to find these barley things and some wheat, and I was like, okay, where? What do I do? And it was like this random box that you had to run to and interact with, and I was like, who's gonna find this?
The thing is that everything of that is always close around, so it's easier. It's relatively easy. Like you don't have to like step too far, even though sometimes it's very vague. But sometimes you experiment, and sometimes when you like figure it out, it's like very rewarding. But I feel you get enough XP just doing main missions that's just extra if you want to do it. Like I mostly just do the gold stuff because I like finding different gear, because it's very limited loot.
I think the main gameplay loop is to, all right, I know there's something glowing gold 40 feet down that way. How do I get there? And then like scouring the earth to find that one entrance to the cave system or whatever it is.
That's how I found Thor's armor that way. So
which is so impressive, because I still haven't found that, and I feel like I never find anything I want unless I look up.
It's what happened with Elden Ring. I was finding stuff you had long paths and you didn't find them. So tell me a little bit about your experience, like going back to Death Stranding.
So I went back because I wanted to play something kind of chill after all the hecticness of Valkyrie Elysium and everything else. Then I was like, with everything, like it's quiet in here, I could just vibe and put on a podcast, and Death Stranding is the perfect game to put a podcast on, because
Assassin's Creed is like that also for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's perfect for that.
And you go, you have fun. And so I was like in nature chilling out, but I forgot that I was actually on some of the last missions for Death Stranding to finish it. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna fine, I'll sit down and I'll finish it off. And so I get my way back to, I think I was at like the Edge Knot City, whatever the last one was, and then
where you find Amelie.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, potential spoilers for Death Stranding, because it's a very obscure and confusing way to actually end the game. Oh boy. So getting back, going through fighting Higgs, which is like, I love that. I wish that was closer to the end of the game, because I was remembering things that I'd forgotten even happened in that game. The crazy boss fight with the tech and health bars, and you're just Metal Gear Solid 4ing each other.
Mario and Princess Beach.
Oh, I hated that line so much. But the more I thought about it, because the dumb crap they do to you at the end wiped my memory of everything that came before that.
Yeah.
Because I must have done that in like a couple of sessions.
When you're in the beach like for like 20-30 minutes trying to escape, and then sitting there while a version of Amelie's like walking around you telling you a bunch of nonsense for like,
and like it's singing London Bridge, and you're just like, just make it stop, just make it stop.
Yeah. Because I remember it, because that was the day I played. That was when I wrote my review, when I had the website, and I hadn't eaten yet. I was like, I'll wait until this is done because I can see that some credits are rolling, and it just wouldn't stop. I was like, Jesus Christ, because you went to that part way after I did it.
Yeah.
I remember when you texted it like 4 days later, I was like, I'm so tired of Amelie preaching at me. I was like, yeah, you're there now.
I found out because this is where that obscurity kind of comes into my frustrations, because I don't think the way Kojima really wanted you to think. And apparently what he wanted you to do was to not stop touching the thumbsticks, because it turns out if you're constantly running the whole time, it's significantly shorter.
Really?
Yes. If you're always running, each of those resets where he stops, he like runs out of breath and it resets where you are, is like a checkpoint that's happening. It's not actually just putting you back in the middle to wait it out, because certain times he does that. It's a new cutscene plays, in which you can skip those, and then it goes back to the gameplay. Do it again, a new cutscene plays, and you do that 5 or 6 times, then wait out the credits, and then run, and then the final cutscene plays, and then
the final cutscene, the reveal of Lou.
Yeah, I was so mad at the game, I forgot that happened, and I was like, "Wait, what?"
I remember when
I played this game.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, that was a legit good twist. Like, realizing why you were always seeing the visions of Mads Mikkelsen and realizing that you were the original BB.
Yeah, that messed me up because I didn't understand like the visuals. I didn't understand like the process for it. And now looking back, I understand so much like why the baby is inside of Sam when you die, why it's sometimes a doll, why like weird stuff keeps happening, because like it's like they explain it all, but because I was so pissed off at that process, I missed the whole point of the game. And then it's like at a certain point you can blame the player for not noticing things about dialogue, but I would say that there's this threshold that when you've preached, I finished that game technically at like 11:30, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna wrap up and finish, and I didn't go to bed till 1:30, and that was all cutscenes.
Yeah, it's the Metal Gear Solid 4 problem of like its entire like epilogue, and on top of that, the post-credit epilogue that game had. It's like Kojima is very because I love Kojima because he's so brilliant in a way a dev isn't, but he also hit a nail on the head that there's something about the way that he portrays his art that at times is disrespectful of someone's time.
Very much. And I will always respect him for the stuff that he does and the amazing detail and the work that he puts in. And the message for Death Stranding definitely landed with me this time, especially
after everything we as a society lived through.
And there was, I mean, just a mini story within that is I was fighting one of the bosses, and I forgot that when you touch the touchscreen button, he calls out, but when you're fighting something, he calls for help, and he's like, hey, I need some help here, and that's when like the little white mannequins like throw items to you, and you can do that on command. And so I'm in the middle of like running out of things, and they're throwing me blood bags and weapons that I can use to save myself, and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm like getting the point of this game, like you have to help, like call for people, be willing to do that. Like literally Sam is so prideful from the whole game that he doesn't want to ask for help and admit that he needs people in his life, and it's until the final cutscene of the game that he realizes he always did need somebody, and to admit that to himself and to others, and that's the whole point. But I got lost with that because they kept preaching at me. It's like he looked at every character and was like, all right, this is your final scene, you get a solid 20-minute like, say whatever you want, we're putting it in the game. And then everyone gets one big moment speech, and then there's just like 5 of those, all one after the other. And I don't want to beat a dead horse about it, because it's a great experience at the same time. But
yeah,
it
has its rough parts, but it's that's what makes Death Stranding so fascinating. It's equally as brilliant as it is infuriating, but it's a game that just sticks with you, because in the AAA space, no other game, no other developer with this kind of budget could get away with this kind of game. This is why you see in indies. So
yeah, and once again, I have to respect him for the way he's carved out this space, where anybody he speaks to, I mean, just looking at the Easter eggs that he's able to put in his games of other games, where he could probably just go up to any of them and say, hey, I really like your game or thing you made. You want to put something in my game? And everyone would be like clamoring over themselves. Just, yes, please, just do it. I don't care what it is. I don't care how. And like remembering there's so much cyberpunk stuff in that game. There's references to freaking Guillermo del Toro talking about The Shape of Water. He's like, you should go watch that movie. That was a great movie. I was like, shut up, dead man. I know what you're trying to do to me. Oh man, just like random stuff like that. Putting up advertisements for Monster and Norman Reedus shows.
But Monster's no longer here, remember? Yeah.
No, they took it out of the director's edition, but I was just talking about original, because they wanted that advertising, that's for sure. But anyway.
And do you have anything to say about Cyberpunk?
Not really. I'm slowing down on it because I'm deciding to kind of take my time, I think. But fantastic world. So excited. We're going to talk more news about it. So I'll save most of anything that I have to say it for later.
Absolutely. Because we have 5 stories. I decided to cut one out of because it's... I'd rather talk about these other stuff. So we have 5 stories, and one of those have 3 parts in it. So press X.
For some news.
All right, Paul. So this first story, it broke literally after I had lunch on Sunday. And when I saw it, I was fuming. Story number 1 by Andy Robinson from VGC. A Horizon Zero Dawn remaster is in the works for PS5, it's claimed. Sources claim an update of the 2017 game is in development, along with a multiplayer spin-off. So that's according to a report by MP1 First, which VGC can corroborate via their own sources. The updated version of the 2017 Guerrilla Games title will feature improved visuals to bring it up to par with this year's sequel for Horizon Forbidden West, in the form of new character models, lighting, and animations, it's claimed. In addition, it's claimed the new version of Zero Dawn will add accessibility features, graphics modes, and quality of life improvements to the gameplay itself. Sounds familiar. And VGC asked SIE for comment on this story. Re-releases of recent hit games aren't a new trend for PlayStation. The platform holder has already released multiple remasters and remakes for PS5, including Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, Uncharted 4, and recently The Last of Us. A PC version of Horizon Zero Dawn was released in 2020 with improved draw distance and higher frame rates, but it mostly reused the assets and features of the PS4 version. In addition, the MP First report claims that Guerrilla Games is currently working on a Horizon multiplayer game for PS5 and PC, which matches what VGC reported last year. VGC understands that the studio has long intended to expand the Horizon series into the multiplayer space. Sources had previously told them that co-op was first planned for the original Horizon game, but was ultimately scrapped so the development team could focus on other areas of the title. Sources said that Sony had been keen to include co-op in the game's sequel, Forbidden West, but Guerrilla decided to save the feature for a future project, which they believed would either be a standalone online spin-off or Horizon 3. So, there's 2 parts of this. One part is more interesting, the other part is the one that made me fume.
So I'm wondering how much of this... So initially, this kind of made me think that they were going to do a Last of Us Part 1 process
because
from the ground up.
Yeah, when their first report was like remake/remaster. The thing is that Sony right now has like blended the both terms in such a way that it's very hard to know where they're gonna land because
sometimes they're not using it correctly.
Yeah.
So for this one, my initial the one that I want to believe, as far as not blowing this out of the water, is that they just want to update a few things and just call it like the director's cut, and it's going to be like, hey, maybe we're going to ask you for an upgrade fee, but overall it's going to be just like the definitive way to play the game. Because at first when we were hearing this, it sounded like they were going to build the game from the ground up, and it's the fact that it's only 5 years from now and it's trying to seem to be following the trend of other games to re-release and ask for full price again has been the frustrating part of this.
Yeah, and that's been that's the part that made me fume more, just knowing the precedent we've set now with The Last of Us remake that came out just literally last month. I'll say this, like, I'll eat a crow and say that I remember when The Last of Us remake was being rumored to be on the works when we started the show last year. Yeah. And then by the time that I replayed Remastered, when I did that whole binge of the Naughty Dog games, and I was like, you know what? This game has aged. It's 9 years old, so I can see them updating some stuff. And even then, I would say that The Last of Us Part 1 remake didn't fully update itself, because things like prone and dodge could have been implemented in a way that I don't think it would have broken the entire game. Yeah. But the feel of the game was improved in a way that I'm like, yeah, if I'm ever replaying this, I think this is the ideal way to do it. But I don't know, unless you're an uber diehard of The Last of Us, if paying full price would have been worth it. I would have, because I'm a diehard. That's the one that I was like, for me personally, I would have. But with Horizon, it's just the fact that the idea of a full-on remake for a 5-year-old game, that's like, that to me feels like hitting a new low point in the video game industry, saying that we're remaking stuff that is only half a decade old. Yeah. And the thing that looks good, you played, you beat Zero Dawn after being like so start and stop for 5 years.
Yep.
But you finally got to beat it.
I didn't feel like there was really a drop in visual quality in the slightest compared to anything right now. I mean, people have said it the best online, where Horizon Zero Dawn currently looks better than most games on all of these other platforms, even most PS5 games.
And it's insane that Forbidden West looks better. Yeah, that's what's crazy, exactly. That they were able to improve it.
So the fact that they feel like they need to, it just feels kind of wrong in some ways, but I can also respect and sympathize with the creative desire to make what you make passionately as best as it possibly can, especially if you have the luxury of going back. The problem exists then is, like, I mean, you look at the George Lucas effect. Where do you draw the line? I was literally
thinking about that.
Because you, as a creative person, can say, hey, I can do this better every time, but then you almost betray the exact reason why people loved the version that was already existing. Even if you personally are like, oh, I'm cringing right now because I can't look at it, but it's like, no, people like that. That's okay.
And I'll say this, like they mentioned here, Spider-Man got a remaster, Ghost of Tsushima got a remaster, Uncharted 4 got a remaster. It's like Spider-Man is trickier because they changed the entire face of Peter Parker, and we mentioned before that it's a face that in cutscenes it emotes better, during gameplay it looks worse. So that's a George Lucas effect of switching something that already worked fine, but they made their entire PR about they needed to do that because apparently the facial model required better like bone building. This weird technicality of how they were trying to frame why they changed the face, which at this day I don't buy. Ghost of Tsushima was a weird one because it got a 60 frames patch if you had the PS4 version, and if you look at the PS4 version and what they ended up doing for the PS5, I looked at the Digital Foundry thing, and the only thing that was different was that the cutscenes were in-game, finally, because there was a delineation between pre-rendered and all that. That's the only time that, but the thing is that both look so good that it's like, it's so subtle. It was so subtle, and they added adaptive trigger thing, and I would say I like what, some games do adaptive triggers right, others don't do it wrong. You had that problem where the trigger is so bad that your thumb.
Yeah, I think I'm convinced that it's definitely because I do a lot of art in my spare time that my hand is already kind of like tired. So when my other hobby also requires very quick dexterous use of my fingers, that it's like
Yes. And then Uncharted 4 was like, to me the improvements of that is just basically the frame rate.
Absolutely. Because I don't think they really added too much else.
Yeah.
Turn the sun off, huh?
Yeah, it's like, My TV went idle for a little bit there.
It's bright enough that I always assume you're just sitting in front of a window with the sun on you.
Yeah.
So when it just goes out, I was like, is the eclipse happening?
I know.
What's going on?
I know,
There
but
it
that's the
goes
thing.
again.
Look, there it goes again. So
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, that's like the only problem with this camera, this new camera, that if I don't have like a direct light to illuminate my face, that's how dark it looks. But then Uncharted 4 was like the frame rate, especially it getting a 1080p 120 frames mode and the 1440p 60 frames mode. It's like the game still looks exactly as you remember it on PS4. And then I would say at least for those three, there was that quote-unquote upgrade path. It was inconsistent because the Uncharted 4, the Uncharted upgrade path was $10. With Ghost of Tsushima, it was 10 also, and then Spider-Man was 20. And then after their whole Horizon kerfuffle, do you remember that from last year? That when they finally unveiled like the new editions of the game, that they were like, oh yeah, and for you to get the PS4 and the PS5 version, you have to buy the $80 version. And everyone was like, guys, you initially said that if you bought this game on PS4, we're getting the PS5 version for free.
I'm so glad people called them out on that.
Yeah, and 2 days later, Jim Ryan, my favorite, he comes forward. He's like, you know what? You are right. We said that. So yeah, you guys are entitled to the free PS5 version. But now moving forward, any PS4 upgrade is gonna cost $10. I'm very, especially right now with this Horizon thing. What they did with The Last of Us, that was a full-on remake because they redid the entire character models and even the way they frame cutscenes, that it's just seamless. There was like no cuts to blacks and all that. So more work was put in that one, but it was still sold as a full price thing with no upgrade path. I fear we're now like in entering this era that this Horizon stuff now based on the story is being positioned as the other three, but I fear they're gonna want to sell it to us just as a full price thing with no upgrade. And that to me is like, that's what scares me the most about Sony becoming so greedy in a way that's becoming a little bit more blatant. And this is besides the point because this wasn't even mentioned here, but I mentioned it to you. Do you remember when they announced that they're doing a Horizon TV show?
Yep.
Yeah. It feels like Sony's being so blatant about the things that they're working on that they're so desperate at trying to synergize things in a way that feels very cash grabby and gross, in a way that I didn't feel that way about Witcher and Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Because remember, it's like even when Edge Runners came out, CDPR obviously they didn't have the goodwill the goodwill to be able to do this, but they didn't go and be like, yeah, we're releasing a new $70 version of Cyberpunk that's gonna be there for you to experience when you watch the Edge Runner anime. You're in the hunger. No, they still had the game, a game that they had already price cut. That game's like permanently $50. Even sometimes you could get it for $25, but it's the game.
Yeah.
So it's like
the full thing.
Yeah, so Sony's not like, they don't want for people to go to those old versions. They want to like put money and resources into a new version that they can sell for $70. And to me, it's like, and here's the worst part: we don't even know if those shows are good. The Witcher show and the and Cyberpunk Edge Runners, for what I know, they're both pretty good. They ended up being pretty good, and that ended up being synergetic.
Yeah.
This is assuming any of this. Yeah.
I was saying, for any gripes people might have had about each of those projects, they knocked it out of the park with what they were meaning to do, which was to give you more either context, story, or world building on a place that's already been done well enough that it made you want to just like, I'll go back and try it out. Or for a lot of people who never tried it and thought it was too far gone, were like, oh shoot, that was kind of dope, let me go check out this thing that might be already on sale. Or like, I mean, Witcher's freaking perpetually at like $10 usually. I think I might have even like bought it again or so. I don't even remember.
I got the game of the, because I had the normal edition, and I saw that the game of the year edition was like $9.99.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll buy that because it's already like the DLC is already pre-baked.
Yeah.
And
so it's just so easy to do. And I mean, I did the same thing for like Metal Gear Solid 5 and its like special version. But, yeah, it's it's such a knocking out of the park process with that. So now I can see how all of these other companies are like, oh shoot, guys, if we put like a show out for a game that already exists, it's just gonna make people go back and buy the game again.
Yeah, there's a Fallout TV show happening. They announced the Medium TV show for that mid game from last January. There's a God of War Amazon TV show. Do you remember?
Isn't there an Alan Wake show that's also gonna happen, or am I making
that
up?
Probably. They have announced all these scraps.
There's a lot of shows that are like in the works.
The Gran Turismo movie that has David Harbour in it.
Which just...
No, I tell you now, because based on this, 100% guarantee God of War 2018 is gonna get also a remaster. Gran Turismo, whatever other Gran Turismo that came out before 7, this are gonna remaster it also, because they're gonna synergize it with these movies and TV shows. And Monkey's Paw scenario, and it sucks, because it's like, we've talked about how cool it would be to have good adaptations of these things, but now we're getting them and they feel so cynical about it. And to me, what makes it more sad is that Sony is willing to do this remaster / remake for 5-year-old games, and they have all this IP, all this old dead IP that they could actually go back to. But now it seems that they're only gonna do that if they can synergize, and it's like, it just sucks that for PlayStation it just feels so obviously money grabby. In a way, it's the worst it's ever been for them, and that's sad. But at least more.
I know it's just, I want to kind of clarify the opinion that we're basing it on is technically the ones that have happened have done so well, and we're speaking about things that don't exist yet. So it is technically like us almost guessing in like an expectation way, but it's more based on the way that we see the movers and shakers deciding to do this and the words that they use, rather than, oh, we're seeing that all these shows are getting made, it's going to be bad. It's not really about that. It's more the motivation behind seeing actual good works.
And also, like, let's just put it this way, as like, this has been a really weird year for PlayStation, because if you just focus on the games that they've been releasing, they're the ones that are putting out content, whether it's from their first parties or partner stuff like Sifu, Ghostwire Tokyo, and stuff like that.
You have to give them at least credit for that much.
But
holding it down.
Their attitude, where they're perpetually silent, where their freaking president goes to freaking Brussels to go talk to the regulars about how bad the Call of Duty deal that Microsoft's gonna get is, and blah blah blah. It's like they're doing all the bad moves around the thing that matters. That you can only expect the worst. Because they're like expending their goodwill just for money in a way. And then, like I kept saying, it's like, it's so weird that this Horizon news at the time, worst thing that could have happened, when we still haven't had a showcase yet. Like the first party barrel is basically empty after God of War. We know that Spider-Man and Wolverine are in the horizon, but then what else there was? So then having this pop out, it's like, oh crap, so you're going back to another game that its sequel already came out, or you're wanting to remaster it again, a game that's not only 5 years old. It's like, I tell you, this is giving me that Ubisoft energy of like, they have found a few things that they think they're successful, and they're gonna like run that thing into the ground, because it's like low effort, big reward for them. That look where that left Ubisoft eventually. It feels like they're heading that way if they don't diversify. However, they mentioned that they want to diversify in a later story. But just real quick before we move on to that, the idea of a Horizon multiplayer thing, I like it in the idea that it so easily can be Monster Hunter. Especially when Monster Hunter is like outside the Switch, it's dormant. We got the Wild Hearts announcement last week about the Koei Tecmo EA game that's going to be like a competitor, and it's going to beat Monster Hunter to the punch for this current batch of consoles. I feel they could have something there with a multiplayer Horizon. Especially
the more that I've seen about that, the more kind of like excited that can kind of make me, because at first I was like, oh, multiplayer, oh gosh, that's gonna be terrible. And then to clarify that it's more like co-op, that was like, okay, I could see that, because just like you said with Monster Hunter, it's such a good example, because you have so many crazy monsters, animals, robots, whatever, in that world, that you could just keep going crazier and crazier with that. Adding in a second or third or fourth character to be like, all right, work together, bring this thing down, that would be nuts.
Yeah, I can imagine 4 players like doing the rope caster, everyone pulling it, and then one can take care of the elemental things.
with Ghost of Tsushima doing its
That.
co-op mode, exactly like that, where you split the single player aspects, where like maybe there's an archetype where each person has a specific kind of weapon. You work together with that. You have different things that you could put onto those weapons, and it kind of writes itself, honestly, because the more you think about it, it's such a no-brainer. And
yeah, and I feel like right now, not many things from Sony deserve the benefit of the doubt for me currently, based on how they've been acting lately, but they deserve the benefit of the doubt of taking established single-player IP and doing like a multiplayer spin-off or a multiplayer something of them, because the Ghost of Tsushima one is like, to me, it's shocking that it was free. Absolutely shocking that they put that entire mode for free on top of like the very meaty single-player stuff, and that it worked so well.
$20-30 by itself for the content that you can get out of it. It's shocking.
Exactly. So I feel like that there's a few of these, and like I keep saying, I feel like Spider-Man co-op could be fun if they manage to eventually get there. Like, imagine someone's Peter Parker, the other one's Miles Morales. At this point, they're like Spider-Man 2 single player stuff, but I feel like based on where Sony wants to get, it's like there's a possibility for you to have like 2 Spider-Mans together. That could be cool.
I mean, now that we've established that, you can even add Gwen in there, and
Spider-Gwen.
Have a group. I mean, you're basically creating Gotham Knights for the Spider Crew, and gosh, that would be awesome.
Exactly.
For the movement. Oh my gosh, now I need it.
Yeah, right. That's what I tell you. I feel like there's untapped potential of taking these things and adding multiplayer in a way that could work. Obviously, remember the era where there were many single player games that were adding tacked on multiplayer back in the 360 era, just to kind of justify the price.
We were like, oh, they need to stop putting freaking multiplayer.
But I tell you, I feel like they had something with that Ghost of Tsushima multiplayer. They really had something. I feel that's in a crowded multiplayer space, that could be the thing that could make them stand out. So
I think that's it. Like, it's the implementation of how you use multiplayer that would really bring it in. I mean, shoot, we'll probably touch on it in a little bit, but Cyberpunk was said to have multiplayer.
That was planned. Yeah, that was actually
planned as well. And you could see how stuff like that could have worked.
That's the scrap, because they were totally talking that they were gonna add multiplayer after the fact. But the things that they saw what the disaster of that launch was, that they're gonna punt that back until something later that we're gonna talk about. But I feel like I would like to see this multiplayer Horizon. It's just that the remaster thing is the one that really grinded on my gears, because it's again just adding another negative list, adding another negative point to the huge negative list that Sony has been, despite them having a really good release here. That's why I tell you it matters, that it's not just about releasing it, but how you control the message. Say what you will about Microsoft. They have managed to spin positive a barren year. Think about that.
Somehow.
It's
I'm honestly impressed.
Yeah. They are doing the PR well, and Sony's just doing everything they can to have bad PR when they could easily have so many wins. You're releasing games. You're actually releasing games. So, story number 2, Paul, staying with PlayStation. Sony says live service push doesn't mean it's leaving single player games behind. PlayStation studio head Herman Hulse has said Sony's growing focus on live service games doesn't mean it's planning to stop making the single-player story-based experiences the company is famous for. In a new interview with Axios, Hulse said the company, best known for producing story-based franchises like Uncharted and God of War, is diversifying but remains committed to single-player games. We have a history and a reputation of building these incredible narrative-driven single-player games, such as The Last of Us and Horizon and the upcoming God of War Ragnarok, Hulse said. He said many of Sony's leading developers want to keep creating these types of experiences and will continue to do so. Some of our biggest titles in the single-player narrative-driven space are also our most profitable ones. He also said Sony would still develop games for PS4 despite no first-party titles being confirmed for the console beyond this November's God of War Ragnarok. We certainly don't want to forget the millions of active players on PS4, and we want to ensure there are great games for them as well. We're evaluating it on a case-by-case basis. The fact that this came out literally after the Horizon leak felt very damage control PR-ish for me. It's good that they're saying that they're still committing to the games I like from them. The fact that we've only heard that they're developing the live service stuff and they're not saying anything, so of course everyone's going to be antsy.
Absolutely. This is that, don't worry guys, calm down.
Yeah.
This is that moment in SpongeBob where he's like, that would be crazy. A bit is getting hit by a flying ice cream truck. And then you can see the shadow appear over inside and he goes, and live.
Yeah.
this is that moment where I'm glad that, I mean, to say you have 12 live service games coming by a certain year is panic inducing for anybody who really loves those single player games, especially for the people who were as brazen as to say single player is out the window and it's not going to be a thing ever again. And that was, what would that say, like 10 years ago now?
Yeah, remember that?
And I remember that
consoles are dead. Consoles are dead. It's going to be mobile. Just multiplayer only.
Multiplayer only, and it's just... Oh, that was a terrifying time for sure, because there was no like butt back against that. That was just the phrase somebody could say and let sit out there for so long.
Yeah.
Now I'm glad that they say things like this, because they're acknowledging not only in the don't worry guys, single player games are okay. It's like he's listing why. Because it's a reason that money people would have to listen to, is because these make the most money.
Yeah.
You have to keep doing single player. And that's what makes me feel the most calm about this whole thing, where it's like, yes, shut up, money people. These games make the most. Keep making them and we'll be fine. You can put out all of the live service games that'll crash and burn after week 1 that you want, as long as you keep making our Uncharted's and God of Wars and all of these other ones.
Yeah. I like what he says about diversifying, because that was a big criticism they got in the golden era that was the PS4 era, that it was like, yeah, all your exclusives are excellent, at least in their majority, and they were big sellers and all that. However, they are all kind of the same game. I kind of told you, it's like, if you look at Horizon, at Ghost of Tsushima, Days Gone, they're basically Ubisoft games. They're the multiplayer, and even Spider-Man. They are following the Ubisoft checklist, the open world formula. Only their gameplay is the one that differentiated them from each other. Obviously, like Days Gone, motorcycle game with guns. Ghost of Tsushima, samurai game. Spider-Man. Horizon, bow and arrow. So at least the gameplay differentiated them enough. But if you were to like distill it, it was still an open world game. And few like Last of Us and God of War was semi-open world, but it was still kind of like that hybrid. So you could be like, yeah, at least it has semi-open, but it's still, God of War feels completely different from those other ones, and even Last of Us feels different from the other ones. But and even in Death Stranding was the other one. Is like, even though it's an open world, it's like that you cannot say that it's similar to what came before it. That felt very unique for an open world, as the Mailman Simulator about traversal being your actual enemy. So. But everyone was like, where are the multiplayer games? Where are the shooters? And all that. I feel the live service thing at least is going to help diversify that. But at least now he's putting the knife in the steak and be like, listen, yes, we're diversifying because we heard you that you want us to diversify. But don't worry, we're still doing the things that you like from us. And I hope that stays true, because the perpetual silence made it feel like, yeah, we're moving in a direction you probably don't like, so that's why we're damn quiet. Because unfortunately, that's how you can always misconstrue quietness, always negative. Always. Right? All the time. So
if you're not speaking, then there's a reason.
Yeah. But singing the live service thing, just for a little bit, story number 3, Paul. PlayStation, also by BGC by Jordan Midler. PlayStation games will wait at least a year before their PC release, except for live service titles. Again, PlayStation Studios head Herman Holtz thinks Sony's future console games will have to wait at least a year before coming to PC aside from live service titles. Speaking to Julian Cheese, Holtz outlined the future of Sony's dual platform release strategy. I think going forward, we'll see at least a year between releases on PlayStation and on the PC platform, possibly with the exception of live service games, Holtz said. Live service games are a little bit different in nature because you want to have a strong community, strong engagement right away, right when you go live. So we might, in the case of our live service offerings, go day and date with PC and the PlayStation platform. This is the biggest but I'm glad they're saying it. Because it's
another example where it's like, hey, at least you're saying the right things, even if it's either overly obvious or very late. And just like, I don't know how much I would have to say about this one outside of thank God he at least said it.
Yeah.
Because we've seen the trend. Now they're at least acknowledging, hey, it's going to come to this. We're going to put it on.
Yeah, and again, this is like, if you wanted to like compare and contrast between like both platform holders, one that went all in on the multi-release strategy of every game on Xbox is also on PC and also day one Game Pass and all that. At least for Sony, because remember, they can do that because they don't give a rat's ass about selling a console over there in the Microsoft side. They want you in their services. Sony cares about selling their console. And they're trying to like teeter the line about, even though the industry is moving towards this multi cross-play, cross-save environment, they're teetering the line of embracing that while also not completely undercutting them selling their console in a way. Like, at least they're delineating, hey, at least a year. If you want to play it on PC and you want to buy a console, wait a year. That's on you. But at least for the live service stuff, you absolutely, if you want those things to live, you have to have a PC release. So what this tells me though is that the Horizon multiplayer game is absolutely gonna be on PS5 and PC day and date. Factions from Naughty Dog, the Last of Us multiplayer, that's gonna be day and date now on PC, especially because the PC releases have been like very sporadic. So like further in the article, so it says here, Sony's 6th PC title, Spider-Man Remastered, released in August. It will be followed by PC ports of Spider-Man Miles Morales, Sackboy: A Big Adventure, and Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection later in the year. There is mounting evidence of 2021's Returnal will be coming to PC soon, potentially making it the shortest release window for an original PS5 title to make the transition to PC. So, if we count about the games that have come out on PC yet, so Horizon was the first one. That was 3-year gap, 2017 to 2020. Days Gone was 2021. That was from 2019 to 2021, so 2 years. Gap shortening. God of War, 2018 release, PC release on 2022. That's 4 years. So again, like, it has been varying. Spider-Man, also 4 years. Now we're seeing that, like, Sackboy: Big Adventure, that was in 2020. Spider-Man Miles Morales, that was in 2020. Those are coming to PC this year. That's a 2-year gap. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection. The original game was in 2016, but the collection was this year. So that's like the same year. So they're definitely testing, but I feel now they're defining the timeline a bit. Because I think they definitely want to maximize sales as much as they can, personally.
Well, I mean, that's just one of the ways things go. You send out one of them to see how it does, and however many years it takes for a couple of people to work on the port for it. And then as they were like, oh, shoot, people really like that. Go ahead and you make your PC ports a little bit less time. All right, that worked again. You and you next time. And then now it's like at this point where it's like, all right, about a year. If you make both at the same time ish, or spend the first however long making the main PS5 version and then immediately take that year to port it over to PC, then it's like, all right, no brainer, easy peasy. This is what you got to work on. The only thing I can see this affecting is if you want to immediately go on to the next game in the series, as a lot of games do, they probably going to have to spend more time on this PC port before they can do that, which is the only real downside. Yeah,
and the thing is that because I always see the argument that people like making about, if you can get this game on PC, why buy a console? And I always say this: why do you always ignore the fact that there are millions of players that don't give a crap about having to build a PC? Like, I saw what my brother went through to try to build his monster PC. The amount of money you have to spend to build a PC. For the people that can spend that amount to get like the best possible gaming experience, more power to you. There is a reason why it's like there is worthy to buy a console, because many people just want a system that they can grab the controller, turn the damn thing on, and just play.
And it works.
And
I think Sony, you don't have to download drivers. You don't have to do all the crazy updates. It just works.
And I feel Sony finally realizes that they can shorten the gap to release a PC version, because they know that there's always going to be a big market that understands that buying a $400 or $500 console, or $450 and $550 right now if you're outside the world because of their stupid price hike, that will be more preferable for many people because they don't want to deal with the hassle. But that way they can also feed the people that want to stick with their big investment on the PC. And if they can shorten that, it's like, I personally don't care. Is I know there's some very console elitists. It's like, man, releasing on PC is like, why even bother with a console? You idiot! You bother with a console because you don't want to deal with the hassle. So, and that's what I've learned. And I always hate the arguments being made that they always leave that detail. I am never gonna invest on PC myself. This laptop that I have that we record on is a good gaming PC, but that's as far as I'm gonna get, because I'm like, I told that story many episodes ago. The 3 hours it took me to get a controller to work for Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I was like, I don't want to deal with that crap. So I'm glad Sony is like gonna give PC players that experience, but it's like it's not gonna cannibalize the people who are gonna want to play it on a console. I tell you, it just won't. There's more millions of us that don't want to deal with hassles. So I'm glad that at least it's getting clearer. So
some of us want to run a podcast instead of dealing with that.
Yeah, exactly. So this so fourth story, Paul. This one's funny.
This is the silly.
Yeah. So Nintendo is reportedly cracking down on uncensored boobs and hentai games. Adult games publisher claims of upcoming titles have been rejected. That's according to Amazing Mature Lewd Titles publisher Gamu Sumi, who has put out numerous adult-themed Switch games in recent years, including Elf's Fantasy Hentai Puzzle, Beauty Bounce, and Inside Her Bedroom. So, however, according to the company, its next hentai-themed game, Hot Tentacle Shoot, has been rejected by Nintendo because of an allegedly refreshed stance on adult content in the eShop. We received an answer from Nintendo, and now we have a confirmation that they do not allow uncensored boobs on their console now, it claimed. Basically, obscene content could damage the brand and infringe its policies. This means that now all games with boobs, nudity should be censored, and that's why our game, Hot Tentacle Shoot, was rejected in the first place. It added, also our recently announced game, Elf's Christmas Hentai Puzzle, was also rejected due to having nudity. That's all the info we have so far. We'll try to send the games without nudity for approval again and see what they say and update the thread if necessary. If true, the new policies could mean that other publishers of adult content on Switch could soon see their games censored. Considering that historically Nintendo has been strict about ensuring its console libraries are clear of adult content, it may surprise some that these types of games have been frequently approved for release on Switch. So, according to the Wall Street Journal report from around the Switch launch, several Japanese developers claimed that Nintendo had expressed willingness to publish more risky or violent titles, which some would have expected it to block in the past. In comparison, Sony has cracked down on sexually explicit games in recent years, the most notable recent example being its censorship of some controversial scenes in Martha is Dead. Ironically, considering the historic reputations of the two companies, there are now several examples of games featuring sexualized content that have been censored in PlayStation consoles but released untouched on Switch. This is so funny to me. So freaking hilarious because it made it seem that publishing on Switch was so funny that someone that was like over a quality control was sleeping at the wheel, and suddenly they looked what was being published and be like, no. In the family-friendly system, they're not getting this like hentai games.
Yep. Oh man. So I don't even know where to begin on this because on one hand, it's just really funny where you have a company that seems to be flip-flopping on one side of things because they've said that they wanted to and then we're like, oh, but not that. And that just means that you weren't clear enough in your processing for people to be able to put stuff out there. The Switch being the bastion of hope for a lot of indie titles probably kills a lot of these studios just trying to look at it from a business standpoint, because that means all of these are only going to show up on the PC and maybe Steam Deck. Because as we've seen lately, nobody else wants to deal with that crap. And as we've also seen, nobody wants to sell it either. So what are you doing? Sorry.
The dog is still making the noise.
Actually, he's asleep and he's having a dream where he's whimpering because he is just laid out upside down right now. So he's not even awake to hear all that. Okay, so so that whole thing is just the weird part of it. But then also it's like, all right, maybe at a certain time, maybe we shouldn't be degenerates about this, guys. So
but the thing is that
it's a little different.
Yeah, the thing is that these are the kinds of games that were always big in Japan. Japan's culture towards hentai and all that, it's so weird how accepted it tends to be. And I think because I remember Sony, especially during the Vita era, a lot of these lewd games were all over that system. And
where the Akiba's Trip game series came
Galgon
from, now on that's a whole other example. So it's like there is a huge market for it, and there's some people who go ham on collecting their games And it's like, to each their own, I guess. But I guess if you're also a certain professional company with an image to uphold at a certain point, at least for the Nintendo side of things, I can see how they would kind of panic at this.
Yes, here's what's funny though. 2019 and 2020 is when I started hearing that Sony had become so censorious that a bunch of these games were being censored to be released in their platform when before they weren't. And these same developers were like, hey, if you want to experience this game as intended with the lewdness and all that, come play them on Xbox and Switch because they're not censored there.
Oh shoot.
So they've been saying this and now they're reacting. That's what I find funny.
Yeah,
and
with
and with Sony, to me, it's like it's funny that they became that censorious because we have two examples, especially all regarding the same game.
The famous one.
Martha is Dead. Earlier this year was being like criticized because apparently they censored the part where there was a minigame where you cut like the face out,
the face off of your sister character. Or something.
Yeah, during the investigation.
That one was, I was like, okay, that's fine. Censor the heck out of that, please.
But then at the same time, they are the company that published a game like God of War 3 and The Last of Us Part 2, games with a level of violence. Completely uncensored with a gratuitous level of violence, and also sticking with The Last of Us. Yes, they're gonna like ban games that show panties and all that, but of course their game is gonna completely show you boobs and a complete doggy style sex scene, as I showed you in the. If anyone wants, just go to watch the Angry Joe review for The Last of Us Part 2, like 10 minutes in. He showed a clip that he censored himself but it's just so funny because they live streamed their entire playthrough of The Last of Us Part 2. When that happened to them, that's when they had that big conversation of like, am I effing crazy? Like, didn't Sony not allow this kind of game? And then just the idea that they must have gone to bat and be like, no, we want to have a sex scene and the character's gonna get effed in the back doggy style and all that, because it's so weird that they had the double standards. You either ban everything or you don't.
That's the worst case of it. Like, I can almost give Nintendo a pass where this almost seems like that, like, lapse in judgment, but they always wanted that. And then Sony was the problem, where they seem to, nobody is controlling all of this. There's like one person that makes one decision, and then there's another person that does another. As we mentioned, the other famous example was the Devil May Cry 5, where
lens glare on the PS4,
back nudity, not even frontal, which is technically allowed for a lot of things. They did extra lens flares to just make sure. There's some
nudity that depending on how it's framed, it can still pass like a PG-13. Even though here's what's funny, like Devil May Cry, it's always M-rated. So why are you censoring a game that's already meant to be played for 18 and up?
So that's like probably a bigger example of that. And then of course the special edition doing away with that, but then the other versions on PC and Xbox not even including that extra level of censorship. I actually remembered that Fire Emblem Awakening got censored like this, where there was a character in underwear in one of the like social links, and they censored it by putting like random drawn on curtains in front of the underwear, almost making it look worse in the process. But they were like, yep, that's okay, all right, we're gonna censor that whole thing. And that was back on the 3DS days, so I hadn't even heard much about this until recently. So it's crazy how companies want to do it and then will allow anyone who is loud enough to go ahead and do their own thing. And there seems to be no real agreement on what is okay, what isn't. Because if you're going to censor the weird hentai games that are really just usually a picture. Also, I think you might have frozen on my
I
screen.
froze. Do you hear me? Yeah.
You look high as a kite and now you're gone.
Yeah. Just keep talking while I fix the stupid stuff.
I just had a moment.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, if you're going to censor like the hentai games, but then allow something that gratuitous in The Last of Us 2 or what was the others? I mean, GTA 5, gosh. And then a lot of the other things that like to throw those really wild cutscenes in there almost abruptly, where you can't even warn yourself, out of this idea of, oh, stop being a prude. Because let's just go ahead and say that there are some people that get heavily triggered by that stuff. Maybe they are victims of some of these things that you are just very quickly showing them. And if we're going to allow some like accessibility options for people to avoid certain things that they really don't need to see, why does that kind of have such a nebulous ruling, you know?
Yeah.
No, so that's, I think we're about
to me, like the big problem with especially with the Sony of it all, is that the censorious crap started happening when the HQ for Sony moved to to California. So what that means is that, because obviously we know that California being the state of Los Angeles and San Francisco, let's just call it how it is. It's like that the most quickly outraged babies of the entire world are over there. That's just how it is. It's like they're the ones that love talking about censorship and all that, and it just feels weird that Sony would try to adjust themselves to that kind of standard, but not be completely not holding themselves true to how hypocritical it can be sometimes. So yeah, my camera is like weird. Now I'm looking very wide, right?
You are. Yeah.
Something happened. Yeah.
You're turning into a music video.
Yeah.
But
I think I'm better now here. I don't know what my camera brain farted there, but yeah, to me, like I buy this flip-flopping by Nintendo in a way, because they don't publish M-rated games like their first party. They just don't. Yeah. They do maintain a family-friendly stance on things. So I do think that this is like even though a little too late, because we've been hearing about these lewd games for so long coming to their system, that it feels a little late. But I'm glad that they're happening. With Sony is the one that I have a little bit more of a problem with, because it's hypocritical. So
yeah.
So good on Nintendo to try to keep their family-friendly thing, even though you can find in their store. What are the games? It's Elf's Fantasy, Hentai Puzzle, Beauty Bounce, and Inside Her Bedroom.
Those, and the fact that last one is inside her with parentheses.
Bedroom, yeah.
After, it's like,
so
gosh, the people that come up with these names have like,
God bless them.
Direct line to my funny bone, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. God bless them. So
gosh.
Enough of that, Paul. Now we're going into a set of news that are definitely very exciting for you. So
yes,
this is a CD Projekt Red, a dump in 3 different parts. So the big one first. Story number 5, part 1. CD Projekt Red is officially working on a Cyberpunk sequel, Witcher trilogy, and more. The news comes via a broad overview of CD Projekt's development pipeline published on Tuesday, in which it revealed it intends to support 3 franchises going forward: Cyberpunk 2077, The Witcher, and a new IP. The Cyberpunk 2077 sequel, codenamed Project Orion, will be developed by CD Projekt Red North America, a new studio opening in Boston, USA, and proved the full power and potential of the Cyberpunk universe, the company said. Work on Orion will begin after the release of the upcoming Cyberpunk 2077 expansion, Phantom Liberty, next year, CD Projekt said in an investor call. Our plans are certainly ambitious and call for a great deal of work, dedication, and further growth, CD Projekt VP of CFO Peter Nielubowicz said in a statement. This is why we're setting up a new team in Boston, which together with the expanding Vancouver team, which I didn't know even existed, will form our new studio, CD Projekt Red North America. As a result, we will be able to fully tap into the North American talent pool. That's a good point. The company's original IP, codenamed Project Hadar, has been incubated since late last year. It's currently in the conception phase by a small team and will be distinct from The Witcher and Cyberpunk 2077. If you go down there, in addition, on The Witcher, CD Projekt confirmed that the 4th mainline Witcher game, announced earlier this year, will be the start of a new trilogy. All 3 games are planned to be released within a 6-year period after the first, it said. So there was this confusion here. People are like, oh, all 3 games are coming in 6 years? No. We're waiting for the first game first, and then 6 years after that, they expect to get the other 2 games. So until the 4th one is released, they expect a 6-year gap for the other 2 sequels. In addition to the new trilogy, an innovative take on the Witcher universe is in development at the Molasses Flood, the American studio behind Flame in the Flood it acquired last year, codenamed Project Sirius. CD Projekt describes that project as an unforgettable story for existing Witcher fans and new audiences. The game will be set in the Witcher universe, but it differs from our past releases in that it targets a much broader audience, said Kaczynski. Sirius will provide both single-player and multiplayer gameplay.
Okay, so
It's a lot. So
yeah, the chart that they have really helps explain it a lot.
yes.
With three distinct groups, one being on The Witcher with Project Sirius, the new Witcher trilogy, Canis Majoris, three separate projects. Cyberpunk being Phantom Liberty, the expansion, and then Orion, and then the new IP being Project Hadar. So this is a lot.
Yes.
Paul Tassi said it, and I think I agree with what he said, where it's like it is very exciting. It's also a little terrifying because of just how much is going on through this group. However, they did also say later on that apparently the switch to Unreal Engine 5 is going to really help them.
That's the big
I agree with that, because I have now worked on Unreal Engine, and I realize how a universal process that is accepted by literally everyone and is pretty much free for you to use is just such a good use of your time, and for gathering new talent who's already proficient in it. And especially if you're about to be making a whole new project team, to hire a bunch of people and then say, hey, here's our proprietary engine, please learn this first and then make the game.
And I feel like their Red engine really scared them after everything that they suffered with Cyberpunk, that they feel like opening the talent pool to Unreal Engine that so many people use, they have epic support and versatility to be able to add tools to that engine in a way that can help developers. That's what's going to speed up the process to be able to do all of this, because after the Cyberpunk expansion, kaput, no more Red engine. So
I was worried at first that because they were only doing the one expansion with Phantom Liberty to Cyberpunk meant that they were not going to be revisiting it, because one of the things that people talked about a lot about both the Cyberpunk genre and the series is that it doesn't really function the best from direct sequels. It is like one and done. This is your story. This is Night City. That is it. We're moving on to the next project and IP. And so I was like, crap, that was their one chance. And that was one of the reasons why it was the most heartbreaking, because I was so afraid that was the only time they were going to visit that world. Now to find out that they're not only doing a full expansion, but a full sequel. I mean, sequel, but it's in the same universe, maybe totally unrelated. That's not really as important as the fact that we get to see the world again.
Amen to that.
That's just really exciting that they're going to take their time and work on that. And I would say, take all the freaking time you need, people. Learn the lesson. Gosh.
No, I feel them finally, because think about it this way. Both Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk were incubated within the same studio in Poland. They're intentionally, by them doing this Boston team, they want Cyberpunk to have its full focus by its own team over there, while the main team focuses on Witcher. And I think that's the way to do it. Like,
this is still who's working on Hadar then? Is that the main group?
Yeah, Hadar's going to be main group as far as we know.
So there's basically a team that is only working on Cyberpunk, which is music to my ears.
And just as a follow-up to that, the part 2 of the story, also by BGC as Chris Collion, the core Cyberpunk 2077 team members are moving to the US to lead sequel studio. That's according to the game's quest director Paweł Sasko, who tweeted on Tuesday that he would soon be relocating from CD Projekt Red's Polish headquarters to help establish the new Boston-based team who will make the sequel. According to the designer, the core team behind the first game will also move to North America to establish the new studio. I see you're asking, so I would like to clarify, Sasko wrote. After the release of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, I'm going to focus primarily on the new Cyberpunk 2077 project codenamed Orion. I'm moving to Boston together with the core team responsible for Cyberpunk 2077 to establish new studio and be the foundation for the North American team. Working together with the Vancouver crew and the devs from Warsaw, we're going to deliver you a banging next game. CD Projekt Red confirmed on Tuesday that the next Cyberpunk game, Project Orion, will be handled by a new US-based studio called CD Projekt Red North America, like we have mentioned. So think about it that way. And if you look at Witcher and if you look at Cyberpunk is the one that feels closest to the Western RPGs made in America.
Yeah.
The Fallouts, Elder Scrolls. They're gonna be in Boston. Bethesda's in Maryland. Who can they poach talent from?
That's true.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so much opportunity for that. I mean, New York is literally like a couple hours away max.
Yeah.
So that's another reason. So another reason is setting. I mean, look at The Witcher and how easily it pulls from Polish mythology and a lot of like Welsh and Celtic stuff, and that's so close to where they need to be. I mean, Cyberpunk is set in mostly California, which is still, I mean, far away, but at least you're on the right continent on this one. So I mean, granted, people are like, oh, you can write things from further away, but there's also a certain level of intimacy that you can gain by being at least in the same country that you would not gather from elsewhere. And to fly around in the same country is way easier than going international to find information.
No, and on top of that, is like the biggest development talent is in America. That's just reality.
Yeah,
there's a reason why many people dev over in California. There's like a massive talent pool there. Even though Full Sail, the university where many graduate, is over there in Florida. There's not a big Florida development community there like it is in like California. But many people from California, then they depart and go either to the studios over in Texas or somewhere else. So, and on top of that, the Unreal Engine thing with Epic's headquarters being like North Carolina, they're going to be much closer there to be able to work on that stuff. So I feel like with the Cyberpunk revival that's happening right now with Edge Runners, the next gen version is working really well currently. Now the sentiment is finally moving in a positive that them hitting with a sequel, this is the moment to be like, you know how things went wrong. You're already working on fixing your development pipeline. You're fixing your engine pipelines. You're consolidating in a way that should be consolidated, where the sequel to this will have its full time. It's gonna have an entire team just focusing on that, so you don't have to worry about Witcher. Obviously, Warsaw is over there in Poland, can always, if they need an extra hand, it can always provide extra hands, because you always have people that sometimes they're done with a project and they can assist with something else. But at least the main core team is gonna at least now be consolidated, and now Witcher can have the full focus of the main guys. I'm sorry, like it was with Witcher 3. They learned their lesson, and I'm glad they are, because if they had kept how they were doing, oof, it was gonna be rough. And finally, just in regards to Hadar, the final part of this like 3-parter, Paul. See, also a story by Tom Ivan. CD Projekt's first original IP, codenamed Hadar, will be another RPG series. Let me take a sip of water. So, the Polish firm announced on Tuesday that for the first time in its near 30-year history, it is creating an entirely new universe from scratch at developer CD Projekt Red. Let me put a stop there. Can you believe that both Witcher and Cyberpunk were licensed stuff? That's not from them. Yeah.
Oh no, I do. Because I was kind of aware of the books for Witcher, and then I had already heard of Cyberpunk 2020, the tabletop game. And then immediately after they announced the game, I found out, like, I did, my hyperfixation research run of like, all right, what's this about? Find out. And finding out, like, Michael Pondsmith, really chill dude apparently, seeing people play the game, seeing how it actually lines up, how he wrote all of the world building stuff already into it, so they almost didn't need to add anything outside of like any original characters, but like Johnny Silverhand was already an existing dude, like Alt Cunningham and the dude that created the net world, whatever, all those people. So it's like it was a home run for that whole world for them. But the fact that this is their first time actually making their own IP is like, oh shoot, they're actually like, they get an opportunity to do this. So
exactly. So continue.
It's exciting. Continue.
So while this marks a departure for the Witcher and Cyberpunk maker, fans shouldn't expect any surprises when it comes to the genre of the new franchise from the storied RPG house. During a conference call on Tuesday, CD Projekt was asked when it plans to start pre-production of the game and if it will be an RPG. When it comes to the genre, we do certain types of games, and I think it's safe to assume that we want to continue to do the games within that think of genre, so you can imagine what kind of game to expect, said Nowakowski, the SVP of Business Development. Nowakowski also said in a prepared statement that CD Projekt began toying with the idea of the game several years ago. Early stage conceptual work commenced in 2021, and for the first time in our history, the IP is being incubated entirely within CD Projekt Red. It is important to understand that right now we're still working on basic concepts and laying the groundwork for this new franchise. So this is as far away as you can possibly imagine. This is probably after the Witcher trilogy is probably out, or at least 2 Witcher games, and the Cyberpunk game is done by the Warsaw team. Right, I wonder what kind of genre.
Now being split between The Witcher and this new IP, so that is the one that seems to be the. It's kind of weird to say that it would be the one that's the most in flux, honestly.
Yeah, no, it is, because they're like still figuring it out. They don't know. We don't know the concept. We don't know setting. We don't know scope. Nothing. We just know that it's being worked on. So.
Right. And I mean, of course, being worked on is like there's every like 5th conference call. They're like, yeah, let's mention that. But for real, it's exciting.
You know what makes me excited?
Doing all that. What?
The transparency.
That's a good point.
Yeah. It's rare to see a company be so wide open about what their plans are. It'd be like, hey, we're planning on doing an entire Witcher trilogy. We're continuing Cyberpunk, and we got a new IP going. This is our kind of like pipeline. And the thing is that with game development being in flux, I don't expect everything to come on time all the time, because you know with your game.
I just hope that they're not once again overfeeding us, because this is kind of like what I was worried about back when we had D23 and they would list like their 5-year mark of what shows,
Marvel
and
shows,
and like all the Star Wars stuff, and then later on to be like, oh, okay, that one looked like my favorite, that was the coolest, and then they're like, yeah, so we canceled that, and then it's like, all right, well, frick. And granted, it's less likely of that.
That hasn't really happened with Marvel, but I get the idea. So,
well, not Marvel, but the Star Wars ones it has.
Oh yes, the Star Wars,
which is the ones that I cared about the most. So anyway,
Rogue Squadron can. So I remember. I know that feeling. Yeah.
And some of the others, I don't remember which, but anyway.
And the games with Knights of the Old Republic and
that's
Eclipse, like being perpetually delayed, and the other switching developers.
Whole nother
but the thing is that in games, it's like if there's something that's so weird about the gaming industry compared to like movies and TV industries, is that the movie and TV industry are not shy about telling you what they're working on, even if it's conceptual. Gaming is so secretive, and really I understand a little bit because I saw it with the Hula Baloo over the GTA 6 leaks. There were more people than there were not that at least they understood the idea of an early build, but there were a few idiots that didn't understand the concept of early builds, that it took many other companies showing, hey, you remember that game? Do you love the graphics on? This is how it started. Yeah. Around the same time, like where you see this GTA build. So this is why
I'm really glad people rallied around that, because it was like a really cool, insightful moment into some of your favorite games.
Oh yes.
But like, I just hope that we're not in for at least one of these burning us. Because with how struggling they've been for meeting some of their deadlines, not just the deadlines at all, but to make the quality that they want, and the ambition that they have, sometimes those don't line up. And I mean, you look at the release of The Witcher 3 being really bad, Cyberpunk being really bad.
Yeah, the thing is that the really bad of Witcher is not even remotely close to what Cyberpunk is. I would say the rough state is some sections of Witcher 3 were, because I know there was a town that ran like 15-20 frames a second at the beginning and a few bugs. Yeah. It was still mostly a working product compared to Cyberpunk that wasn't. So
at least as long as Roach didn't teleport onto your roof and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like it had its own problems and you had issues with it, but you're right, it was still a working game. It was just a very frustrating at times because of some of the glitches, to the point where they added a quest that was filled with in-jokes for glitches that you could exploit.
That's awesome.
And it was like a tax collector, and he's like, hey, did you ever do these things? And
yeah, I think that was for the DLC, right? For the I think it was in the Hearts of Stone DLC.
I thought it was free because I got it on the main thing, but that doesn't matter. Just anyway, I do have concerns. However, I am overall.
It's always concerning when you see this much, but I also see, like, especially when they like caveat it. It's like, hey, this 6-year period for this Witcher trilogy is starting whenever this game comes out. So we're not promising. You just know that we're working on it.
Right.
And I was reading, people be like, how could they be able to like do a trilogy in that small amount of time, I can imagine like map reuse and all of that can help, and also and also better underlying technology.
Pipeline, and now once again using Unreal Engine 5 for all of it rather than their own proprietary engine is going to help so much.
Yeah, now that we know that Unreal Engine is like being so widely adopted, I just hope to God that many developers are able to like take the baseline of that engine and add a distinct enough art style that doesn't become like trademark Unreal Engine 5. You know what I mean? Because it seems like everyone's wanted using that engine. I would hate for... It's kind of like what happened with Unreal Engine 3, the Gears of War, like during the original trilogy of Gears of War, that engine became so obvious that it was being Unreal. And Unreal Engine 4 helped diversify a little bit. Like you can look at Fortnite, look at Hellblade, and those things don't look the same. Or look at Kingdom Hearts 3 and look at Days Gone, and both games built in that same engine, and say that they're built the same way. So I hope that there's a stronger push for a diverse art style, so that it doesn't, because if there's something that I really appreciate about the Red engine is that it looks so unique, even with its problems. It's like the visual style of CD Cyberpunk. It's very striking. So, and with that, Paul concludes the news for this weekend. Let's blast through a ton of games that are coming out in the week for October 9th to October 15th. So, Asterigo's Curse of the Stars comes to PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and PC on October 11th. Evil comes to Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC on October 11th. I assume that's a Game Pass game. In Sound Mind comes to Switch on October 11th. No More Heroes 3 comes to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC on October 11 also. The first time that series finally migrates outside of Nintendo. Lego Brick Tales comes to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on October 12. Fueled Up comes to PlayStation 5, Series X, PS4, Xbox One, PC on October 13. The Eternal Cylinder comes to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S on October 13. The Last Oricru also comes to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and PC on October 13. Triangle Strategy, the PC version of the Switch game from earlier this year, comes out on October 13. Dragon Ball The Breakers comes out on PS5, Xbox Series X, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on October 14. NHL 2023 comes to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One on October 14. Nickelodeon Car Racers 3 Slime Speedway comes to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC October 14. PGA Tour 2K13 for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC on October 14. And finally, Scorn comes to Game Pass, basically, on October 14. So Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC. That's a lot of games, and not many of them are like, What is this Dragon Ball The Breakers game? Just out of curiosity.
I told you once about it, but I couldn't remember myself.
Because this is an action game, but what kind of action game?
Let me, because it's an online game, so I think it's Well, what systems did it say it was for?
It's for pretty much everything, but yeah, it's on everything.
I'm gonna just quickly. I think it was details about like time travel shenanigans.
Yeah, and I know this is like an asymmetrical multiplayer game, so
that's what it was. Okay, yeah. So it's several of the side characters from Dragon Ball, and then there was like different villains that normally would actually crush them in a straight up fight. Basically, freaking Friday the 13th, Dead by Daylighting. All right, you have to get around the city, escape this super powerful character, and try to like either beat them or turn the tables or whatever. I haven't seen any gameplay of it. It's a really interesting and funny concept. They were like, hey, you remember all those characters that get kind of shoved to the side because they can't actually fight? What if we made a whole game about them trying to survive? And I was like, okay, that's actually kind of neat.
I bought Kakarot. It was on sale, and because they're giving a free upgrade for the next gen version that's coming out in January. So
yeah, because that was really low on sale, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like $14, but I bought the deluxe edition the week before. That was like 21. So
shoot.
Yeah. So,
dang. Well, are you planning on playing that anytime soon?
Kakarot, no. I just bought it just to prepare for the PS5 because I saw the visual comparison of how they're improving. they're doing some really obvious visual improvements in like the world and frame rate that I'm like, yeah, I just bought. I basically pre-ordered it to play a PS5 version. I've heard good things about it. I said good. That's
cool.
7, 8 range.
I mean, it was interesting enough because it was so detailed in what it did, adding like RPG elements to the actual retelling of the full storyline. So it was at least new, and we'd never seen something like that before. But it was like slow enough that I didn't really want to deal with it.
I'm curious to see how people receive No More Heroes 3 on next-gen consoles, because I will have to look it up, because I don't know if No More Heroes ever made it outside a Nintendo system before. So I could be wrong though. Let me see.
I think so.
No More Heroes 1,
because the rest of those were Wii only, and that was a big deal because it was the motion controls. And then 2, the only one there was a spin-off that I think made it to...
I think it was Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes. That's the one that made it out. Yeah.
Okay. And did it say what it was on?
It's on PS4.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it came out in 2019 actually, so.
Yeah, it was like relatively recent, honestly. But it wasn't really my thing because it was very heavily focused on those mini games that like jumping around, not like the core action that we know of No More Heroes. It was mostly just those weird mini games, and I was like, not my scene. But some people loved it.
Yeah, I want to hear like what people say. I'm right now I'm saving for Plague Tale. That's the next week. So and for this one, like Scorn, I heard really positive previews like a week or two ago, especially the skill up one. Really very fun. It was so funny. Like his reactions to Scorn.
It looks terrifying enough that I don't want to touch it, but I hope it's good.
Yep, that's again the beauty of Game Pass. Good or not, I'll get to try it.
It'll be there.
And with that, Paul, that concludes this week's episode of the X-Bound. Where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I posted some new art today, and I also posted just weird crap happening in video games today. So follow me there for that. Where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me at _Joe on Twitter, at Alejandro Segovia 93 on Instagram, at twitch.tv/TheSlayerGiant, where you can find our live playthroughs of Stranger of Paradise and Symbiotes, and some of my written content at thecriticalcorner.com. So, Paul, it's always a pleasure doing this with you, and I'll see you later today so we can continue our chaos journeys and anything else that we end up doing. So, everyone that listens, we always thank you so much. If you like what you listen, always give us a like, a subscribe, whether in your podcast services or over here on YouTube. And I definitely look very blue right now because my TV shut off.
I'm blue,
oh yeah, I love that song. That was always a great workout song, especially for spinning.
Glorious.
So, and see you next week, Paul, because we're in it now. We're in the thick of it. So
not gonna be sleeping anymore.
Yeah, and everyone else, stay healthy and safe, and remember,
press X
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.